You're welcome back to the gavel. Now let's take a look at some of the other major happenings in the National Assembly during the week.
The House of Representatives ad hoc committee on the state of the nation's refineries organized an investigative hearing to examine the efficiency of the turnaround maintenance of the refineries. The NNPC returned after being turned back along with the CBN on the first day for failing to appear with relevant documents.
You are not the right person to come here and answer a question, so that the CBN will now send the right person with full information to come and face this committee.
Things went south during the hearing as a member of the committee and the chief operating officer of the NNPC engaged in a war of words.
Sir, can we please stick to what we're here to talk about? Turnaround.
No,
sir, because you cannot ask me questions about the upstream.
If I ask you a question, you do very well to answer. Although we'll be here for a long time. It's my job to ask you the questions,
and I'm answering.
Yes, all right. So you answer. Don't be cheeky about it.
I'm not being cheeky.
Don't fluff around with me. You are under my authority. You answer to me. I do not answer to you. Wait, this is the parliament. I was elected to ask you questions. It's not your job to ask me questions or to be cheeky about it.
I'm not being cheeky.
Right, if you don't want to answer the question, you leave that position.
I have answered.
All right, so let's carry on in a very...
Do not shout at me,
Don't you
do not shout at me.
Who are you?
Calm was eventually restored, but there are still pertinent questions for the NNPC to answer.
Are you aware that Eni is a multinational or international oil company that is being subjected to prosecution by the public prosecutor of Milan?
The turnaround maintenance is supposed to be taking place 2 years, and it's now on the average of 10 years or even more. The reason you gave is that you don't have money to do the turnaround, but you have money to pay for subsidy.
Eni, or through NAOC, is a major investor in the upstream in Nigeria. They have a number of assets, and Eni is also a major downstream player across the globe. I also want to confirm for the record that NNPC does not pay subsidy. We actually benefit from subsidy ourselves. We don't pay subsidy, sir.
The committee was also dissatisfied with the documents presented by the NNPC and the CBN.
We are also expecting to have an audited account of NNPC and also the budget for the same period of time, 5 years.
The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria presented a proposal which they say will improve the country's oil output. Participants at this public hearing argue that proper turnaround maintenance is not being carried out on the nation's 4 refineries, 2 of which are in Port Harcourt, 1 in Warri and 1 in Kaduna, with a production capacity of 445,000 barrels per day. Experts believe this can be improved upon by either privatizing the refineries or carrying out proper turnaround maintenance, which is supposed to be in a 2-year interval as against the current 10 years, which the country currently practices. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has kicked against the sale of the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Limited, NLNG. The House is urging the federal government to suspend the proposed sale of the shares of the company. The motion, which was moved by Representative Randolph Brown, accuses the federal government of ignoring the warning of the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission and the Nigerian Labour Union against the sale of the nation's assets, especially one from which it made 412.6 billion naira and $400 million in 2015. The House resolved to mandate its Committee on Gas Resources to investigate the truth of the proposed sale and ensure compliance.
The House notes of a proposal by the federal government to sell the multi-billion-dollar Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Limited to raise funds to reflate the Nigerian economy. The House is aware that the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, stated that one of the ways to fund the plan will be through the sale of some national assets and the proceeds reinvested in the economy to raise the needed capital for infrastructural development. Worried that the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, RMFAC, and the Nigerian Labour Union, among other organizations, have seriously frowned at this move and warned the federal government against the proposed sale of initial assets, especially the NLNG. Further cognizant that Nigerian workers will be at the receiving end if the sale is allowed to go unchallenged. The House resolves, 1, to urge the federal government to suspend the proposed sale of the NLNG, as doing so will not be in the best interest of the nation's economy, and 2, mandate the Committee on Gas Resources to ensure compliance.
Away from the oil and gas sector, a bill for an act to repeal the Terrorism Prevention Act 2011 and enact the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Bill to provide for prohibition, prevention and combating of terrorism activities in Nigeria has passed second reading. Some of the changes in the new bill include incorporating kidnapping and hijacking into the bill. It also seeks to establish institutional frameworks, including the Nigeria Sanctions Committee for the implementation and enforcement of its provisions. The bill was read a second time and referred to the Committee on National Security and Intelligence.
And I rise to move that a bill for an act to repeal the Terrorism Prevention Act 2011 and enact the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Bill to provide for measures for the prohibition, prevention, and combating of terrorist activities in Nigeria and for related matters, HB 1296, be read the second time. Mr. Speaker, unlike before, we now have the offense of hostage-taking, kidnapping, and hijacking as part of the offenses included in the acts of terrorism in the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Bill. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, as I said, I have this already distributed to members. All I want to request is your support to ensure that this bill, which has been in the offing, in the drawing table for the past 5 years, is allowed to go for second reading.
Bill is referred to Committee on National Security and Intelligence.
The Senate is to probe allegations of ill treatment and xenophobic attacks on Nigerian judges and other legal personnel serving in the Gambia. The Joint Committees on Judiciary, Human Rights, Legal Matters and Foreign Affairs have been mandated to carry out investigations on the matter and submit a report to lawmakers for consideration.
Some of the Nigerian judges and other legal personnel who serve and are serving in the Gambia Judiciary and Ministry of Justice have been complaining of ill treatment, hatred, and xenophobic treatment, including the following: refusal to provide working facilities to enable them discharge their official functions effectively, and underpayment of salaries, and in some cases refusal to pay them as and when due. Refusal to provide accommodation to judicial officers seconded to the Gambia from Nigeria. Eviction of some members with their families from their rented and hotel accommodations without alternative accommodation provided. Threat of deportation and regular issuance of short notices to Nigerian judicial officers to leave the Gambia for delivering judgments against the government of the Gambia. An official taunting, official intimidation, taunting and labeling Nigerian judicial officers seconded to the Gambia as incompetent or mercenaries who are working against the interests of the Gambia, and so on. The Senate is further concerned that the complaints of the affected judicial officers are yet to receive the deserved attention by the appropriate Nigerian authorities several months after written complaints have been forwarded to the appropriate quarters.
Meanwhile, the Senate has invited service chiefs to discuss and come up with solutions to the proliferation of firearms in Nigeria. Presenting a motion on the matter, Senator Suleiman Hunkwi explains that sectarian clashes, including herdsmen-farmers crisis, are now more devastating because of wrongful and easy acquisition of firearms. He warns that this ugly trend is contributing to the colossal loss of lives and property in Nigeria.
Meaningful efforts is not seen to be done on the part of government to curtail the proliferation of firearms in Nigeria. The situation has worsened to the extent that some opinion leaders are calling on Nigerians to stand up and protect themselves. These prodding at self-defense, if not checked through action by government, would certainly get to the extent that firearm would be secured by every household, either in the name of protection or for some other heinous purposes.
In his contribution, Senator Shehu Sani is accusing the political class as being complicit in the proliferation of firearms in Nigeria.
It is not possible for our security agencies to bring an end to the violence, the killings, the bloodshed, and the proliferation of arms in this country as long as the political class include violence as part of their strategy to retain political power or to assume public office.
The Senate has also mandated its Committee on Intelligence and National Security to conduct a thorough investigation into the proliferation of firearms in the country to unravel its remote and immediate causes.
Now, this is where we draw the curtains on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavell@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.